Hi, my name's Cheese, and welcome to another Fossil Sweeper Progress Update video. If you haven't heard of the project before, you can find an overview linked down in the description, but the TLDR is, it's like Minesweeper but you're digging up fossils, and you get to build skeletons out of the stuff that you find. Over the past month or so, I've continued on with small work items and testing, while much of my attention has been dragged away by end-of-year stuff and participating in a game jam. In the previous video, I mentioned that as part of tweaks needed for text-to-speech polish, I had updated the count of dug tiles and excavated or smashed fossils to be calculated at once, rather than incrementally, after the individual delays for each tile that together give a sense of the dug area expanding outward from an epicenter. Something that revealed itself through later testing was that because the check-win function is called every time a tile is dug, the conditions for a completed dig could be met multiple times before the dig event had finished playing out if the final dig event cleared multiple tiles. This wasn't really noticeable as a problem when testing in practice mode, but when playing normally, it would result in the previous gameplay phase being set to null, which is a condition that typically indicates that the game is played in practice mode, which in turn would lead to the current player data being invalidated. The path of least resistance fix I ended up going with was to just restore the old behaviour and have a separate variable to track the counts for text-to-speech. While working on the previous video and wanting to more clearly show timing for text-to-speech, I decided to update the debug TTS overlay, that's the large green text with a white outline, to hide the currently spoken text when an utterance finishes. Previously, it would just stay visible until the next utterance was spoken or until it was explicitly cleared via code, and in the initial footage that I recorded, it felt like it was communicating the wrong thing. Because of the way that the text-to-speech API is structured, and because it relies on a callback function being specified for when utterances start or end, my options for handling this were a little bit limited. Unfortunately, there's no nice self-contained way to know what it is that is currently being spoken. If utterance begin and end events were exposed as signals, like most of the rest of Godot's events, I'd be able to pass in some extra arguments that would make finding the current string easier, but alas. The awkwardness comes with utterances potentially being queued or interrupting, and that also not being surfaced to the callback functions. In the end, I wound up implementing my own utterance queue that I can pop items off the front of when they're spoken, and hope that nothing gets out of sync with what the TTS stuff is doing behind the scenes. In the first half of December, I made a small game with Splurp and Localhoster, both of whom I collaborated with last year on Art for Snakes, which we submitted to both TazJam and 70fps Game Jams. The TazJam theme was glass half full, and after some brainstorming we settled on an idea that explores different forms of crying, where the player must prevent their glasses from filling with tears by shaking their head while also performing some other actions. Broadly, it hit the beats we wanted it to hit, and it's been both gratifying and motivating to have a game jam project more or less land as intended, compared to say Cloud Courier, Wink Commander or Keyhole, where I still have a not insignificant amount of lingering work to do before I feel like those projects can speak for themselves. I'm looking forward to bringing some of that motivation to bear on Fossil Sweeper in the new year. While working on the previous video, I migrated my devlog template to Blender 5 in order to take a look at some of the development that Blender's Video Sequence Editor, or VSE, has received over the past few years. Until last month, all of my Fossil Sweeper videos have been assembled, edited and rendered from Blender 2.79, so there's a lot to catch up on. I was hoping for significant performance improvements for click proxies, but if there are any, I'm not noticing them. One interface change that puzzled me a lot was the removal of start and end handles for extending and truncating clips, in favour of a clicking and dragging on the edge of strips mechanism. In my workflows, I frequently grab the start and end handles of a single clip to slide the window of what's visible back and forth without adjusting the duration. I also frequently grab the end handle of one clip and the start handle of another that it crossfades to, so that I can move the fade point around without changing the fade's duration. Since these are such heavy parts of my workloads, I initially thought I wouldn't be able to continue to use Blender 5 for video editing, but a couple of days later I discovered by accident that the handles are still present and still selectable, they're just a lot smaller and not visible. It's a long way from discoverable, but as long as I can get my work done, that's what matters. There are several changes that I found myself appreciating though, including audio waveforms being shown by default, strip properties being separated from the video sequencer panel, slip being surfaced as a primary tool, and the cache overlay, which makes it easier to see which bits of the timeline are ready to go, and which bits will lock up Blender for a little bit. In a slightly more accelerated time frame than I had intended, I am currently in the process of migrating my primary video presence to a PeerTube instance. If you happen to be watching this on YouTube, you may want to consider following me instead on spectra.video, where I will be posting future devlogs. If you're already watching this on PeerTube, thanks! I'm excited to be here and I'm looking forward to sharing more videos in the future. Feel free to check out any of the other channels attached to my account, where I do art, talk about, and play other people's games. A very big thank you to the supporters going by on screen at the moment. Their support has helped me eat while making this game, and I am so very appreciative. A huge thanks also to Screen Tasmania, who supported this project with a small grant. Anyway, that's about it for today. If you'd like to keep track of development or try the playable prototype, you can find some more links down in the description. And if you're super keen to check out what we talked about here today, I make early test builds available to my supporters on Patreon. Thanks for watching, and goodbye!